This snare cost me $5,000.69 with shipping that I paid for all by myself. It got shipped all the way from China, and it was signed by Julian Casablancas himself, sent to my front door. I'm just joking. It was probably more like $160, but that's still kind of okay. You're not here to see me talk about my financial issues. That's not why you clicked on this video. You're here to see me talk about how I stroked this snare drum, this Yamaha Stage Birch snare drum that I stroked. You're here to see me talk about how I did all this to my snare drum. Those of you keen eye viewers may realize that this is The Strokes. This is The Strokes' first album on my snare drum. That's pretty cool. They're kind of underground though. I don't know if you heard them. They're kind of my favorite band. Can you tell? Anyways, that's just what I want to talk about today. How I changed my snare drum into this bad boy in like 5 or 4 hours. And that's from someone who's just inexperienced and has never done this. This is the first time I've done this and it turned out pretty good. But first, I have to bring you guys back to the beginning. See, I am not original enough to come up with something like this on my own. Like, I didn't even know this was possible. But thankfully, I was blessed by the gods of YouTube in my algorithm. The channel called The Drum Thing came into my hands and had a video called, what is that? What? This is a poo rolled in sprinkles. You see, my goat talks about how he has this snare drum that catches everyone's eye because it looks really nice. And if you see the video or the clips that I'm showing right now, it does look very nice. I was surprised to learn that he reveals that that drum is just I think it's a $50 snare drum. That's like a student snare, but that's not what matters. What matters is how easily he was able to just customize this drum to look so nice. He used a t-shirt. That blue wrapping around the snare drum, it's a t-shirt. How do you get the t-shirt on the snare? He glued it. I can do that. So that's basically where this whole idea started. It's with that one video. And since then, I went to Amazon. I bought a tapestry of The Strokes for about $14. I was considering getting the exact glue stick that he had, just in case like a regular glue stick would like damaged my wood or something. But I did the wise thing of not even looking it up and just doing it with a regular glue stick. It turned out fine. So I'm just going to show you the footage that I had way back in, I believe, June of 2025 of how I got this to what I have today. That sounds good and looks cool. And hopefully someone could do it too if they want. I don't know. I'm just doing this. Okay, cut. All right, it is definitely the same day that I recorded that last bit and not about 2 weeks later. Don't even question it. And now let's go and show you the footage for the snare drum. If you notice, this isn't how the snare drum started. The actual original footage I had where I was removing all the snare head and the little bits and bolts got corrupted. So just visualize that in your head, how that looked. But once all that is taken out, it just looks like that. It's wood, it's hollow. And there's a tapestry that I'm going to be using that I showed you that I got on Amazon. So the obvious next step here was I had to cut this thing to size. And this was honestly the most annoying part and probably the most time consuming because I just couldn't get a grip on myself for this part. You have to hold this down in such a, I don't know, not even like a weird way. I just had to hold it down with something, and my dumbass was not doing that because I'm a genius. I don't know. I was using my foot to hold the thing down while I was cutting it and trying to keep the same measurements going along the whole thing, the whole way through. And I knew the measurements I needed for this thing because I already know that my snare drum is a 14 by 5 by 5. So I knew that the width had to, no, is that the width? Height. That's the height. So I already knew that the one side of this tapestry had to be 5 by 5, and I just simply looked it up how long this thing would have to be to cover the whole circumference, the outer layer, I don't know, of the snare drum, and Google gave me an answer about 45 inches. So that's what I'm cutting here. Of course, given that this is just the tapestry, I just cut the full length. I didn't count the 45 inches until way later. But I did have to make sure that this tapestry cut was 5.5 inches across the whole way, which was the annoying part. I don't know why I didn't put a book or something, but I did get it done, and it's not perfect either. Fun fact, I still have that rest of that tapestry on my wall. Very cool, huh?
And basically, once I cut that whole thing off, I was just double checking my work, and it looks good to me. I had to trim it, obviously, because my cut wasn't perfect, but that is very easy to do, so I didn't worry about that too much, or that's why I'm not showing you. There's the next step. For the next step, I got my glue stick. Now, I was pretty scared about gluing the tapestry to the snare, because once again, I didn't know if it was gonna work and if I was just gonna mess up my snare drum. But let me tell you, that thing worked like butter. It honestly stuck on there really well. Like, it was way better than I could have imagined. Yeah, I took a risk by not doing research, but it turned out pretty good. And it was super easy. Like, I didn't think it would stick that well to my snare drum, but it did. The only downside is I don't know if it's gonna look good if I ever decide to like take this thing off. So that's a fair warning. And I basically just started gluing it slowly all around the snare drum. And wow, it looks so good. Wow, you're doing such a good job. Thank you. And then there's me trimming it. And it's already looking like it's coming together. I mean, honestly, that's kind of like the only like difficult part, I'd say, was just cutting this thing to size and then I guess gluing it. Because other than that, the only other thing that I could see being difficult is this next step. This was when I had to actually like puncture little holes into the snare drum so I could actually fit my screws back into the snare and through the tapestry. And I was just doing this with like a little knife. I had like a little X-Acto knife, cutting like a little cross like into the little holes. And it's very easy to see where those holes used to be because the tapestry is so thin that you could just shine a light and you'll know exactly where they're at. Now, I will say that the hardest part in terms of like adding all the screws back together was for the logo, because at least for my logo here, it is connected by these two tiny screws, and I had to make those cuts very carefully. And not only that, but I unfortunately put the tapestry together in such a way where it was on the overlapping part, so it just made my job harder trying to put a screw through two layers of the tapestry. But I was able to do it, just more time consuming. But basically after that, everything else was just a piece of cake. The logo was the hardest part. All the screws were going back in together and it was already looking really good. So yeah, once all the cuts were made, it was basically just about putting all the stuff back together and memorizing, making sure that you know where it goes where. But that's pretty easy. I just, memorized it or took a picture. And honestly, once you take care of all the cuts on the tapestry, once the tapestry is on there, building this thing back together is so easy. If you could build a Lego set, you could do this. Like, come on. And basically, it's done. Honestly, I don't have much to say here. I mean, it's honestly kind of easy. It's just about memorizing where you put everything and basically getting the measurements right for the tapestry. That's the hardest part. But if you can just look up your measurements for the snare online and know what you have to cut, and that's it. And wow, it's done! Oh my god! All right, I think that's all I gotta say. Whatever. A little serious talk. I really hope that someone actually does look at this video and see how easy it was for me to do this, because I think customization in general is just such a cool thing that we're allowed to do. And if you actually found this video helpful, that's amazing. I mean, I don't even know how you're watching this and not watching the drum thing. Like, he does what I'm doing times 1,000. But if you're here, I appreciate that. But if you like this, go watch the drum thing. I'm gonna link them in the description. So yeah, I hope that this video gave a little bit of more transparency to what the drum thing did in his video, because he showed about like, I want to say 5 seconds of actually doing the whole like behind the scenes process of changing that student snare drum into something that looked really nice. I struggled a little bit when I was trying to turn this whole thing to what it is now. So I actually do really hope that it helps somebody, because it was a really fun process. I liked it. That's kind of the whole video. Maybe some of you are curious on how this thing sounds. Insert transition. Holy shit, that's so fucking cool!